Hey guys, Darren Stott here, pastor at Eden Church. We just got done with our first two services. I'm on my way to Eden North, and so I'm supposed to be doing something right now. Perhaps I should be eating lunch or taking a nap. I'm not too sure. I did feel like the Lord wanted me to go live, and so so I'm live. I want to release a quick video to parents on how to chat with their children about abuse, and more specifically around sexual abuse. And so I was in the service today, and there's various words of knowledge that were coming up, and saw the Lord do some really great ministry. I've been up since about 4:30 a.m. This morning, so I woke up before the alarm went off. I was watching some of the stuff that's taking place in the church, and my heart was broken, and I thought, hey, we need to probably have a conversation, empowering parents to how to have conversations. So that's what I want to do right now. So again, this wasn't really part of the plan today, but just wanted to get on here and do this. Now, do me a big favor, share this if you would, because there may be parents. Let me just turn this down here. There may be parents that are watching this that haven't had a conversation with their children, or haven't had a conversation recently. And perhaps the Lord is on this to really prevent unhealthy situations, to really prevent the kind of environments where abuse could occur. So that's the purpose of this video, is prevention. And heaven forbid, if there is something that is happening, that God in His light, in His love, and in His grace would reveal it, so that there can be healing for the child, and so that there can be ultimately grace and mercy even for the perpetrator, so that they can find justice while they're alive, versus waiting until the judgment seat of Christ. So that would be my prayer. So again, this video, I'm going to be talking to parents on how to have conversations with your children around abuse, and so we'll be diving into this now. For some parents that are watching this, so we'll begin. Okay, we're beginning right now. For parents that are watching this, perhaps you say, Pastor Darren, I had that conversation with my kids, so I can check that off the list. Thanks for making this video, but we got that covered. I chatted with my child when my child was 3 or 5, or we haven't had that conversation yet because they are 3 years old or 5 years old. They're just too young for a conversation like that to happen. Or you'd say, I've had that conversation, but now they are 10 years old, 11 years old, and so we got that covered. This conversation with your children around sexuality, God's heart for sexuality, on safety. This is a conversation that is not a one and done conversation. This is a conversation that we have to have multiple times with our children. So this is the kind of thing where it's good to bring it up. I would even say like once a year. You don't have to put it on the calendar, although you could. But this is the sort of thing where you have to visit it and revisit it. And so I think that's really important. Also, with something like this, I felt a grace to release this video. This might even be the kind of thing where you're like, hey, Darren just released a video on talking with your kids around these topics or around these conversations. And so just in light of that, we might have talked about this 6 to 8 months ago, but Darren just released this video. Maybe the Lord is saying something, and maybe the Lord would use this video so that you can have a conversation with your own child. You don't need to be having conversations with other people's children on this. Shouldn't have to say that. That would be a red flag. You have the conversation with your own child, because that's where you have spiritual authority. That's where you have legal authority. So there's no use. There's no need to have this conversation with other people's children. That in and of itself would be a massive red flag, and could even be a form of abuse. So first of all, right off the bat, it doesn't matter if you're in the church or outside of the church. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian or if you're an unbeliever. This topic of abuse is rampant both in the church and outside of the church. Even when it comes to physical abuse, which is very, very serious, the statistics for physical abuse are no different in the church than they are outside of the church. And this is not the way it ought to be, and is kind of indicative of a lack of revelation concerning sozo, in that you have people that believe positionally they're righteous, but practically there's still a lot of open doors to the enemy, still a lot of triggers in the soul, so that when triggered, they would lash out with violence against their spouse or against their children. And so believing that Jesus is Lord, yes, but not being transformed by the fullness of sozo. So this word, the same word that we have for salvation, is the same word that we use for healing and inner healing and freedom for the whole person. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. But you can't assume that just because somebody is a Christian that they are free, that they are sexually free. You can't assume that just because somebody is a Christian that they are safe. And that is that's not a good assumption to make. In the same way, you can't just say that because this is a church and they have a children's ministry that you can just trust them. They're a church, so you can just trust them. And so it's important that, and this isn't just for churches, this could be for daycares, schools. It's important that as parents that we don't assume that there are safeguards, but we know what those safeguards are, and that we see consistency in those safeguards and best practices that are being kept. So if you are visiting a new church, small church, big church, mega church, it doesn't matter. You need to ask them what their policy is to have a safe place for children. You want to know what their policies are around their volunteers. Have their volunteers been through background checks? Are there always multiple adults in a room? Is there never an environment where there's just one adult with children in the room? So again, it doesn't matter church size, doesn't matter church culture, doesn't matter church tradition. You can't just say, well, they said they were a Christian, or they said they were a church, or you said he was a pastor, okay? In the days in which we're living, and let's just be real for a quick second, it has nothing to do with it being the last days, or with it being 2024, or the internet. This has always been the case. It's just now we are aware of things that used to be swept under the rug. They can't be swept under the rug anymore because we're in this information age, because of the internet and everything else. So it's not that things are worse than they've ever been. It's just that things are just more transparent than they've ever been. And for that sake, we need to be vigilant. We need to be aware as parents, and we need to be responsible as parents. So churches need to be responsible, yes. Schools need to be responsible, yes. But ultimately, we as parents have to take responsibility for the safety of our children. And that means no assumptions. Okay, we just can't make any assumptions. I thought it was a safe place. I thought it was a safe person because of their title or anything else like that. When it comes to your children, I would love to. I don't have a formula. I'm not even going to recommend any books today to have this conversation. There's nothing wrong with books. There's nothing wrong with formulas. But usually children know, especially when they start getting older, children know if you're coming to them out of sincerity and from the heart versus coming to them with the script. I would just say that you are better off being clunky and unprofessional and just attempting to find connection with your children. I think that's the big win, is when we're willing to have these kinds of vulnerable conversations with our children. This is when intimacy is actually forged between a parent and their child. And so this is really just an opportunity for you to have a greater intimacy with your child when you're willing to have these uncomfortable conversations. And the conversation should basically look like, beginning at a young age. With our children, I think it'd probably be as young as probably 3 is what I'm guessing when we started having this conversation. And the way we would have it is around the parts of the body where the bathing suit touches, and that this is covered by a bathing suit because it's a private part. This is only for you. and there's never a reason for anybody outside of a doctor to ever touch you on your private part. So that's how we would have that conversation, of course, with our 3-year-old. And then we would say that it doesn't matter who it is, that you need to know that this is your body. And if anybody, it doesn't matter who it is, if it's not your doctor, and even if it's your doctor, you have permission just to say no, okay? No. And we could spend a lot of time talking about different illustrations. I think that you should be creative. I think that you should be thinking about the different awkward environments that somebody would take advantage of, and have age-appropriate conversations with your children. Also, if you're married, it's really good to include your spouse in these conversations. The older a child gets, a daughter might want to just talk with her mom, or it'd be appropriate for a father to chat with his son. If you have a teenage son and you're a single mom, you could even approach this with a youth pastor or a pastor, because there's an appropriate way that this conversation can be had, and usually even with a group, versus like, again, a one-on-one type situation. The point is that these conversations need to be had. I don't think it's about a formula or a specific way of doing it. And even if your child gets to a certain age where it seems a little bit awkward, again, being creative and praying into it. And then sometimes it's just awkward, and awkward is fine. We can't just avoid awkward situations. If you're a mom and you want to talk with your son about anything, you should be able to talk to your son about anything. And again, the awkwardness is just an opportunity for intimacy. But I think timing is important. Don't just do a random, I think too many times we just bring things up when it's inappropriate, or too many times there's confrontation in locations where there shouldn't be confrontation. Too many times we're unprepared to have conversations, and we just bring it up because we get triggered or mad or scared or fearful. I think a lot of times parents will get fearful and they'll bring something up. This is not a conversation you need to have at a restaurant. This is not a conversation you need to have at church with your kids. This is definitely not a conversation you should have in the hallway at church. This is something in the appropriate environment. I also recognize that for people that have been victims of abuse, and your filters were unfortunately marred and warped even as a young child, it might be hard for you to discern what's appropriate, but that's when you can reach out to trusted friends, family, mentors, pastors, elders, and to get counsel. What would be the appropriate timing, setting, and so it's okay if you don't have a lot of great awareness as to what's appropriate. See, I think that's the other thing is I've run into the church where parents, because of their own sin actions, or maybe they were involved in something happened to them, because they don't feel like they have the best skills in understanding what's appropriate and understanding how to filter things, they just avoid it altogether. A lot of people, because of their own shame from their own past, they think, who am I to say anything to my kids? That's the wrong thing to say. That's the wrong thought to think. So as a parent, you have the grace, which is divine enablement from God, to lean into these conversations. And believe it or not, your children really want you to have these conversations with them. So again, your body is yours. It doesn't belong to anybody else. You got to say no. Teaching our kids to say no to people in authority. Just because somebody is in authority doesn't mean they are God. It doesn't mean they have the voice of God. Okay, we follow leaders as they follow Christ. The second they are no longer following Christ, we don't follow them. Obedience to God before loyalty to man. Fear God and not man. So you won't have, but sometimes there are leaders that use the Bible, use authority, use whatever else to manipulate and control people and for their own selfish desires. And so we don't ever want our kids to be manipulated by these leaders that would use their leadership unto themselves. So therefore, we teach our kids to question those who are in authority respectfully and honorably, and we empower our kids to say no, and they can say no to anyone. but they do it honorably. And if somebody's trying to hurt them, all honor aside, you so we teach our kids, if you've got an authority person and they are wanting to harm you, you can scream at them, you can hit them, you can kick them, you do whatever you have to do to get safe. That your safety is more important than anybody in authority. So I think that's really, really big. Really empowering our kids at a young age to learn to say no. And we can even practice with them. Let's practice together. No. Okay, let's say it out loud. No. And then what do? You get away and you get to daddy, mommy, grandma, grandpa. You get to someone that you can trust. The next thing I just want to hit on, and Andrea and I did this with all of our children, this conversation we've had with all of our children, is this whole idea of secrets. That in our family, we don't keep secrets. We have surprises in our family, but we don't do secrets. Meaning that if anybody ever comes to you and says, can you keep a secret? Or this is going to be our little secret, we don't do that in our family. We don't believe in secrets. We don't honor this kind of form of confidentiality within our family. I think there's also just a lot of bogus stuff that happens underneath the banner of confidentiality. That's just witchcraft and manipulation. So with this being said, there's no secrets in our family. If anybody ever comes to you and says, this is going to be our secret, you just let them know, I don't keep secrets. My dad's given me permission to gossip. Everything you tell me, I'm going to tell my dad. The same thing is true with Andrea in our marriage. People will come to Andrea and they'll tell her things. And Andrea just says, listen, I don't keep secrets from my husband, and vice versa. And so if you're coming to me trying to get to my husband, that's not going to work. Okay. Again, there is a difference between confidentiality and secrets within the clergy environment. I guess you could say there are things that have to be kept in confidence. There is a foundation of trust that is built there. It's especially true. We just wrote an article on counseling. So it's especially true of counseling and clergy that there's a safe place. But with that being said, we always tell people if what you're confessing has anything to do with abuse, and specifically abuse towards children, by law, we report that. And unfortunately, it's something that I've had to do several times while being a pastor, is you learn of something, and I think you have 24 hours. My practice is I go immediately, I just do it immediately and get it reported. So that is such a big deal. It's not my. I've had pastors say to me, "Well, we have to investigate it before we report it, and we need to see if it's Nope. There will be investigators. Okay, the investigators will do their job. But we are required by law in our state to report any sort of abuse that involves a minor, and I won't partner with any ministry that doesn't practice that. So if a ministry is aware of sexual abuse and they don't report it to the authorities, I won't have any partnership with that ministry. I've resigned boards. I shouldn't say boards. That there's one specific case where I had to resign. I don't want to make it sound like this is happening all the time, but one particular ministry where I resigned from that ministry upon learning of their failure to report, and it turned out to be a real big deal. And so we walk things out. We walk things out legally, and it's good, and the law is good, and justice is good, and especially for the victims. It's not about saving a church or saving a ministry or saving anyone's reputation. It's not about dishonoring a person, dishonoring a ministry. We recognize these things as allegations, but we report them, and then we do our best to bring restoration to all the parties that are involved, bring a lot of grace and a lot of conversation. The next thing is, and I hope that there isn't anyone that watches this today where there are already red flags with your children. But again, it's It's maybe a situation where your child was asked to keep something a secret, a situation where somebody tried to show your child something, tried to show your child images, things on a cell phone, any sort of inappropriate fantasy or conversation regarding their future that makes them feel uncomfortable, anything that involves touching. But it doesn't just have to involve touching. It's any conversation that makes your child feel uncomfortable. Please come to me. But sometimes there are red flags where your child might act a certain way around somebody that's in leadership or around a family member. A little child might stiffen up, might show signs of fear, might just completely emotionally shut down, physically shut down, might start misbehaving, might start just acting irrational, not like their normal selves. If you see these red flags, it's very, very important that you are seeking for a connection of heart with your child, that you're not losing your temper. You're seeking for that to create a safe place with your child to where they can begin to talk to you. And because a child they should talk with their parents first. A child should talk with their daddy first, with their mommy first, before getting brought before the authorities or the police or CPS or before a counselor or anything like that. Counseling, all these things are really good, but it's so important that there's a strong bond and connection between the child and the parent or the parents. And so this is why I'm creating this video today is that we're not a lot of times Christian parents spend all their energy trying to control the behaviors of their children, but at the end of the day, if we can do our best to influence the beliefs of our children, we'll never have to be into the whole behavior modification that the religious system has kind of been a big proponent of. So as parents, we're wanting to influence the beliefs of our children versus always trying to punish their behaviors and thinking that behavior punishment is going to bring them up into good Christian, righteous, holy living. The way that we influence the beliefs of our children is that we have to establish, guard, and protect connectivity of our heart with our children, that they know that we love them, that we would do anything for them, that there's nothing they could ever do that would get us to reject them, and that we're contending and working to build a safe place where our kids can talk with us. So don't ignore the red flags. It might be something small. You might notice different things. I don't have to give a lot of specifics of that, but as parents, you get these red flags, and then you're just having the conversation, and you're not freaking out. Okay, I like to have what I call the what's up conversation. Okay, I do this all the time, whether it's people on my team or other people that I partner with. I notice a red flag. Red flags are not a big deal. They're only a big deal if you ignore them. Okay. Lights on the dashboard are not a big deal. They're only a big deal if you ignore them. So you see a red flag, and it's just an opportunity to have a what's up conversation. You just, hey, what's up? What's up with that? Hey, I noticed you acted this way. I noticed you responded this way. I noticed that you've been being kind of weird. I noticed, hey, this thing, what's up? Sitting down with your children, hey, what's up? There are resources for parents. I was raised in kind of the James Dobson days. My parents used those books and stuff. I'm not making any recommendations for books for this, because I would rather you just be willing to be humble and approachable and clunky and weird. And you can even tell when it's with your older kids, you can even say, listen, I'm not a, I don't even know how to have this conversation, but I just want to kind of struggle with you through this, and your children will respect you for it. Your children will ask you questions, and as you're just honest and open, it's going to establish an amazing trust and amazing bond, and that's such a big deal. Just creating a shame-free environment where the grace of God can come. And where if there's anything that's in hiding, if there's anything that the enemy can use to bring shame, that gets exposed so that God's grace can come and bring freedom and truth and liberty. So I think this is really big. There's just one point, one take home, and that's, talk to your kids. Okay. Talk to your spouse. Just talk to them and make this a regular thing. Don't be like, I talked to my child once. No, make this a regular conversation. Talk about what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. We have a lot of conversation around why people can have infected software where people that we would normally love and trust, where there could be kind of a sickness of soul where they would want to hurt us. And that's something that you got to process through with your kids, that there are people that maybe they know, love, and trust, but there can be a sickness of soul there. And if they ever are acting out on that your kid can recognize that and really stick up for themselves and really protect themselves, to really be enabled and empowered to protect themselves, so that we are raising up powerful children. And I think that's a big deal. So thank you for the grace to allow me to stumble through this conversation with you, not having words that are perfect, but just wanting to start a conversation, and praying that the Lord will use this. And I just declare the Lord's protection, the Lord's grace, his Psalm 91 refuge wings around your family, around your children, that no harm would come near you, in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless.